Have you ever considered the cost of ineffective communication to you, your groups, and to the companies that you work for? Irish playwright George Bernard Shaw, he said it best. The single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has actually taken place. And I bet everybody watching this video, you can all relate to the illusion of communication. We've all seen the death by PowerPoint presentation that, in my opinion, it should be considered cruel and unusual punishment by the Geneva Convention. We've all been to those dysfunctional meetings that they just fall apart and voila, there we are. There's a requirement to have another meeting to put the parts back together. And then, of course, there's the festering relationships where there's no respect, there's no trust. And to try and make progress is just every single step, barriers go up, and it's just extremely painful. I want to give you a couple of examples of how this so-called soft skill, communication skills known as a soft skill, let me show you some of the rock-solid profit erosion that can go on if you don't get this right. About 12 years ago, I was invited to an oil company's energy conference down in Houston. And they flew 900 oil workers in from all over the world for this safety and security conference. And I went to the reception the night before and I met some, what I would call colourful characters. I met a guy from the Yemen, and he was a Scottish guy who rolled his R's and he told Dave, I work at this gas plant in the middle of the desert. And you know, Dave, the gas plant is surrounded by 15-foot high sand fences. And Dave, you know what they're for? Those stop the rocket-propelled grenades from hitting us. Beside him was an American, and I don't do the American accent very well, but he was an American who is in Colombia and South America with his family. And he said to me, Dave, I'm down in Colombia and the security guys, they're always on my case. They say to me, you gotta leave your apartment at a different time every morning and go a different route because of the kidnapping risks. And you know, my kids go to a local school down there, they get on a bus, and the bus is followed by a security guard who has an automatic weapon in case the kids become targets. So as you can imagine, these oil workers, working in the danger, the hot spots of the world, they needed some really good information from the Safety and Security Conference. And what did they get? They got Bobby. And Bobby was a corporate director, and he basically turned up with 60 slides of PowerPoint, and they were chock full of lengthy sentences, data and statistics, not one single visual. Within minutes, you could feel the energy getting sucked out of the room. And I think at some stage my soul left my body and it went outside and it sat on the curb and it started smoking something that you can only smoke legally in Colorado, saying to itself, oh, that's so bad. God doesn't pay me enough to listen to that rubbish. So what was the cost of bad presentations to this conference? Well, word got out in the corridors that people were not getting much value from all the different presentations. And the company did a count at lunchtime a couple of days later to see how many people were turning up. And they discovered that half the people were now not attending the conference anymore. So what was the result of this? They ended up cancelling future conferences. And this one, just think, $2 million was the cost of this conference. Let me give you another example in a smaller setting, and this would be a town hall meeting that a company is holding because it has got some major changes going on. So it flies in about 50 managers from all over North America, and it's going to cost about $250,000 to wine them, dine them, fly them in, and put them up in hotels. So imagine about 60 or 70 people in a large conference room, and there's no microphone. And these people are all in their 40s, their 50s, some in their early 60s. And Basically, the town hall meeting is started off by a vice president, and he doesn't look like he's comfortable speaking in front of people. So he basically looks at his shoes and he mumbles, "I'd like to welcome you all here today. We've got some important changes going on, and it's very important that we get your feedback." So basically, that town hall meeting started off on low energy. And what happened after that, there were a couple of different presenters and no microphone. So the people at the back of the room started getting frustrated that they couldn't hear what was being presented. But what turned frustration into anger was that people at the front of the room were asking questions, and the presenter did not repeat the questions back so that the people at the back of the room could hear what was going on. So here we had a $250,000 town hall meeting, major changes going on. Managers, this was going to have a major impact on them, and they had no idea what was going on. So if you look at the annual oil conference, that's $2 million. You look at a town hall meeting, that's $250,000. Let's now take it down to even smaller, and something that we get to see probably on a daily or a weekly basis, and that is the Ineffective meeting. And this particular meeting, there were about 20 people in the room and a couple of presenters. And one of the presenters, he basically gave a handout that just got down into way too much detail. And at one stage, one of the directors at that meeting, he took up the handout, threw it down the table and shouted, "This is rubbish! This is rubbish!" And the presenter's manager, he basically spoke up and says, "Okay, let's call time out, guys. We'll go revisit this material and we'll come back and present at a later date." So what was the cost of this? Well, I would look at you 20 people in the room, and each of these people were probably $100 an hour people to put a value on them. And 20 people, that's $2,000 that the company has just wasted, because now there needs to be another meeting to go and revisit the material. But also think about the presenter, how he felt that, and the manager felt that they had failed. So again, when you reflect back on what is the cost of ineffective communication from an individual perspective, a group perspective, and a company perspective, this can represent rock solid profit erosion. It is really worth the effort to take those little steps. There's nothing difficult about communication skills, learning them. It's hundreds of little nuggets of information that when you start applying them, suddenly you start to rise up about everybody else, and you start to feel really good because you're becoming a lot more effective in getting the job done, and you're also potentially saving your company hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, by being a successful communicator. My name is Dave Hill. I'm a professional speaker. I'll see you next time.